Hello and welcome to Mann's Model Moments. So as you can see, I am back in the garage, workspace, man cave, whatever you'd like to call it. Principally, although it is the 21st of December, it isn't that cold yet. It's a bit variable. I'll talk about the weather because I'm British, but it's been really weird. One day it'll be cold, next day it'll be sunny, then it's windy, then it's just get. I mean, the UK has always had a lot of weather, right? Because we're in a lot of weather streams and systems and all that kind of stuff. But it has been crazy. I mean, there's still flies around. Whether you attribute it to human activity or the Earth cycle or whatever, it's crazy messed up weather, So I won't go into the politics of all of that, but it's just warm enough for me to be out here. I haven't even got the heater on. So that's why I'm back out here rather than inside, because the lighting here is better and so on and so forth. So thank you for joining me this evening. I thought I would do something a little bit different for, I don't know whether this will be the last stream of the year. I might squeeze maybe one or two more in. Obviously still got the short skipper, as it was named by you all, to do a bit more on. I still have the hunter. We haven't forgotten the hunter. We have it here. I have been putting the other decals on, which just takes forever because there's so many of them. So I wanted to give a bit of background to what's been happening with me. You'll notice perhaps that the video content has slowed down a little in the last month or so. Basically, the shop is a lot of work right now, and trying to get the balance of getting all of that to get enough to actually be self-sufficient, and balance the channel. That's one of the reasons I've been doing live streams a bit more, because live streams are obviously a little easier in that respect, because you're just here doing whatever, and then there isn't any post-processing. I like to have a certain standard for my videos, so I always record, so I always write myself a script, which I go through after I've edited the actual video together. I'll then go through and do the voiceover. So I'll write the script for that, then I'll do the voiceover, then I have to balance that to make sure that it's all a reasonable audio level, make sure there's no background noise, then edit that into the video, and then obviously publish it all, and then put it onto YouTube. Then do all the YouTube stuff, which actually takes a reasonable amount of time. I might actually do a video on that, actually, on producing videos for model content. It's a little bit different, I think, than for some other content out on the internet. But because of that, I do have a huge backlog. I've mentioned it a couple of times on streams. I've got a huge backlog of videos that require that finishing process. Shooting the actual video is actually the easiest bit. It's all of the stuff that happens once you've got it all, in the can, as it were. So that's why there's been a bit of a slowdown there. There's also some personal stuff, so I'm still at this moment still going through. It's not a messy divorce; it's just not a clean divorce. So that obviously adds a bit of pressure and worry to things. And solicitors, can't say too much because my current partner is a solicitor, but you know what they're like. So there's that side of things happening as well. Obviously, have the podcast with Moss, and the reason again that we're a bit behind there is editing for those. We do have 3 episodes. We've got episode 9, which is about a third of the way through audio processing. And then we have episodes 10 and 11, which are both on video. So we're going to go to video so we can have it on YouTube. So I've actually, some of you may have seen, created a Beyond the Box YouTube channel. Plan is to put all of the back episodes on that. Now we do need some video to go with that, so I have to put together that. It'll be very basic, so it'll just be sort of audio format. And then going forward, it'll actually be video on YouTube, and then it's very easy just to take the audio and I can put that onto the Buzzsprout feed that then goes to everywhere, iTunes, Google Podcast Player, all that kind of stuff. So it's been really busy and I'm really enjoying it. It's just been a lot. The shop will get easier. It takes a lot to put stuff on the internet these days in a shop for retail. So a website, for each item, you require what's they called a harmonized system code. Even though I'm only shipping within the UK at the moment, I can ship outside of the UK, but I'm not doing it for the general shop. I'm only doing it for requests that come in. So if you say, hey, and one of the questions actually on the community post that I put in today was, can you ship to the US? Yes, I can. I don't do it because shipping to anywhere outside of the UK is silly at the moment. Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, I think, opportunism from certain shipping providers. Um, Global oil prices have risen. Obviously, they're falling away a little bit now. Still a backlog from COVID, so that kind of hangover effect as well. I'm hoping things will get better for that, so that at some point I can do regular shipments to Europe and hopefully the US. At the moment, the cost is just pretty prohibitive. So I always try and give you the best rates. I also do want to make sure your shipment gets there. So surface mail, as it used to be called, incredibly slow, like 2 to 3 weeks, and a lot of stuff gets lost. So, and there's not much coverage. So, and even that's not not very cheap, right? So the expensive shipment options aren't that expensive compared to it, and they're better in terms of tracking and everything. So, but that is one of the things that I'm hoping to get better at. But harmonized system codes are needed for shipments, international shipments. Even though I'm only doing it in the UK, you still need a harmonized system code for every single item, which of course is different from a model kit to a pot of paint to a set of tools. You also need a GTIN number or barcode number for every single item, which is of course different for every single item. And otherwise, Google Ads basically, can't remember the word, it deprioritizes. That's it. It just says they're unsuitable, and so it doesn't advertise them, doesn't show you in searches and stuff, which is really hard, right? And of course, all of this makes it harder for a small company, one man, me. Of course, if you've got lots of employees, you can just, you pay somebody to do your website, and you just have another guy just saying, put all of these codes in, or do the code to get it from this Excel sheet onto the stuff. I can't do that. So that takes a little bit longer. So anyway, with all of that preamble and sort of a little bit of context, if you like, I did want tonight to be able to give you the opportunity to ask whatever questions you have about the channel, about me, and thank you, Taggers. I did see your question. How am I? I'm okay. It's like it's a very different experience. So when back in April I became officially self-employed, I had a consultancy contract which paid very well. The shop does not pay well at all, in fact. It's just about covering its own costs at the moment, which of course means that I am hemorrhaging cash for the mortgage and heating bills and all that. So at the moment, it's just the more I can make in the shop, it slows the rate of descent of those things. So hopefully I can get it to the point where if I can break even for all my costs, personal costs as well as the shop costs, then it'll be sustainable, which is obviously what I'd like, because I don't really want to have to go back to doing consultancy or getting another job. But we'll see how that goes over the next couple of months. As for Christmas, if you hadn't gathered by now, I am not a particularly religious person. So I would call myself a firm agnostic, in the fact that it could also be atheist, right, depending on your definition. I don't believe in let's say, a religion in terms of, I think, rather than, as the Bible puts it, God created man in his own image. I think man created God in his own image, which is why a lot of the, let's say, Abrahamic faiths and some of the others are quite mean and petty. Their gods are quite mean-spirited, not very omnipotent, and how you would expect somebody with that kind of level of, or a being with that kind of level of authority and understanding to behave. So, so Christmas for me meant a lot more. One, when I was a child, and two, when I had children. Now it's just myself and Maria. It's kind of a non-entity, really. So yeah, Christmas, you know, it kind of it's one of those times where it's for family. I think, you know, it's nice to see people coming into the shop, you know, with their kids, and you know, either looking at models themselves or the kids are excited to see something and stuff. But yeah, I feel I've passed that mantle off myself for these times. So so that's how that all goes. Let me just look through, because I am way behind. So I'm just starting at the beginning. Polygon. Second question, comment. This is easily the best new scale art. How do I put these on? I always forget to do this. New scale community I have discovered this year. Keep up the great work. Have you any plans to do longer build videos, like multiple parts? It's a good question. I need to adjust how I'm sitting, because otherwise I'm kind of below the bar. So I have done multi-part build videos in the past, like the Spitfire. And I think when you've got a build video that extensive, or a kit that extensive, it warrants it, right? So the answer is yes. I think if a build, I'm still going to adjust this slightly. If a build warrants it, for me, I don't want to try and feel, or for people to feel like I'm stringing out, you know, stuff just to get views on different videos. That's not what the channel is about. I didn't start the channel to get views. You know, I started the channel really for myself to finish stuff. As you can probably tell from various things I'm doing, I find it easy to start stuff, right? But to finish stuff was a problem, and the YouTube channel I thought can help that. And in general, it has, right? The Spitfire, I think I did, it was 4 parts plus the unboxing. I think it was 4 parts, 4 or 5. And I do have the Airfix 124 scale Typhoon, which I picked up this year. So I think that sort of build for that is warranted, right? For anything really smaller than that, I'm not sure I would do a multi-part unless there was a specific purpose to it. So the answer is yes, but only kind of where I feel the requirement, I guess. Just scrolling down a little bit more. Oh, and thank you very much for the kind words as well. So that is actually one thing that's a good point, right? The community, because, and I've just noticed, you know, going through the chat here, I see some familiar names. So thank you all for joining in. One of the things I didn't expect when I started this is the community aspect, because modeling has always been quite a private, you know, a very individual hobby. And for me, the first model club I went to was one of the best experiences I had. And it was just a group of guys. It wasn't affiliated with the IPMS, just a bunch of guys. We got together, we had models, we occasionally scraped at them, but we were just chatting. So it was kind of like a modeler's version of going to the pub. I moved down to the Southwest in 2000, 6 months after I had my first child. And the club I joined, because I wanted to recreate that experience, and the club I joined was an IPMS club, and it didn't feel like that. It felt very clubby, you know, which wasn't something you know, the whole bureaucracy and the admin and stuff, not something that particularly enthralls me, as you can probably pick up from how I've spoken about some of the IPMS stuff in the past, and if you've seen Airfix and Chill. I actually reached out to a number of modelers at let's see, it'd probably be November, December last year, to see about forming a community, because I thought YouTube enables us to do that. And that's how I came across Moss and Matt at Model Minutes, their Discord community, because I reached out to one of them, can't remember which one it was, and they said, well, no, not really interested in that, thank you, but we already have that. So if you'd like to join ours, you're more than welcome. I was like, yeah, that's great. If it already exists, I'm only looking because I couldn't find anything like that. But if you already have something that exists, that's great. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's not like I'm interested in it being my club or something. And that I joined in January this year. And that has been, I would say, the single biggest change in my modeling for 20 years. I think the community now that's prevalent on YouTube is exactly that same sort of environment, the same sort of camaraderie that I had in that group of friends that were just, kicking about, talking about what was going on, not necessarily just in modeling, but obviously all that common shared interest. And Airfix and Chill on a Monday night, very much like that. When I've got together with John Alec and got together with, Kits and Bits and stuff, it's all that kind of same thing. We're all just coming together, sharing a common interest and love, and just chatting about random stuff, right? That to me has been, as Polygon said, the best scale model community that I've been involved in for, as I say, 20 years. So just scrolling down, and hello people, I won't go through every single one because I'll just be saying hello all evening, which isn't the point. So if you have a question, type question so I don't miss it, because otherwise I might just skim through it. So looking for the next question. Whilst I just look through that, there was a question on the community post, which I should also open here just to make sure that I don't miss any others that have come up, which was, again, way too complimentary, because it started off something like being a respected modeler, and I'm just like, I'm not sure I'm respected. But that aside, yeah, being a respected modeler and a retailer, could I suggest to some of the model companies to include masks in their kits? That was basically the gist of it. Biro Dude, that's that. I think you vastly overestimate the influence of, well, certainly of me, but actually of the YouTube community in general. I am not sure many are listening. I think there are a couple of exceptions, and actually on Beyond the Box, we've actually done an out of sequence. Moss and I recorded last night a video special for 2023 Roundup, and I'm editing that, and that should go up. If not before Christmas, just after Christmas. It'll be in the next week. Because as I mentioned before, it's easier to edit video than audio, bizarrely. Airfix, I think, have set themselves apart from all of the other model companies in terms of the way that they are engaging with social media, with creators in general, and taking on board suggestions and listening and watching streams and stuff. So I think Airfix maybe, although there were a couple of worrying signs from the Gannett kit, which I mentioned on my review. The instructions being crushed into half of the space of the Seeking ones. I think there were 10 sheets instead of 20. If that was in just the name of cost reduction, I think that's a mistake. And they don't print sprue frame layouts in their instructions. If you notice, that's one thing Airfix don't do. And again, whether that's in terms of cost, I don't know. But I mean, printing an extra couple of pages in black and white. I mean, I've done some printing and stuff. It doesn't add that much cost, and if you're adding another £1 or £2 onto something which is £50, that's not a huge difference. There is one company which I think makes the best instructions currently, and that is ICM. I think they have the clarity that Airfix have, because I think Airfix were leading the pack for a while, but I think ICM have overtaken them. They have nice glossy covers, which means you get the 3 views or 4 view color renditions on nice glossy paper in the same way that you do with Airfix, but they obviously supply them separate, which I do prefer. But I'm not going to knock the ICM approach, because I think it's still the color renditions are still good. I would say Airfix pips them in that respect, but ICM do print full sprue frame layouts on their instructions, and they do include templates for doing your own masking for the canopies. I know because I've actually got a 1/48 scale Sally from them for review, and it has a huge, absolutely vast number of glazes, because it's got that kind of big greenhouse thing on the top. It's a weird looking aircraft. It looks like somebody got a normal bomber and put a greenhouse on it for some reason. So they already do that, and I think smaller companies like ICM, I would say ICM are moving up. ICM did more new releases than Airfix this year. Airfix are good. I think ICM are good. Mini Art also good. The other mainstream manufacturers like Revell, Italieri, I don't see them engaging. I don't think they're going to do that just off their own back. Tamiya, then I don't think they're even aware of anything happening in Europe. I just don't think we have that much impact. Tamiya produce really good kits. They have included masks in some of those as well. So, they're doing their own thing for their own vision. But I don't think the rest of the companies are going to listen to, certainly not me, or even, the YouTube community in general. I wish it were otherwise, but I think it's only really Airfix of the big manufacturers that are even involved in this area. Moss and I were talking about the Revell WhatsApp group, which is just like it's not even a bulletin board. It's just a vehicle for them to disseminate information. And it's all in German, which is great if you're German, but German is not an international language. People do criticize English speakers for not learning other languages, or oh well, it's not in German or French or whatever, you want it in English. It's like, but English is spoken as an international language in a lot of areas. Science, for instance, the international language of science is English. Conferences tend to be in English unless they're local. Even offices of companies that I've worked with in the past in Germany, their site language was English. So if you're trying to engage a community, you want to have a language which is at least common to a majority of them. And a lot of Europeans speak English because of that fact. English, Chinese, Spanish, those are very cross-cultural languages in a lot of areas. So anywho, let me go. Oh, Tigers. If you were starting the shop in 2024, would there have been much you would have done different? Wish you knew compared to starting the shop this year? It's a good question. Yes. You might not like the answer. I wouldn't have invested as much in Airfix. I am an Airfix convert, I would say. I think Airfix are doing some great things for modelers. Hornby is a dreadful company to do business with. They're archaic, difficult, and I don't want to say unresponsive, but yeah, the business practices are very old school. They don't have an online portal, right? Revell has an online portal. Barkman have an online portal. Creative have an online portal. The Hobby Company have an online portal. Tiger Hobbies have an online portal. Small companies like Albion Alloys, which do things like Das Werk and Dora Hobbies, Dora Wings, have an online portal. So it's the 21st century. People have had online portals and expect online portals for everything. Apparently it's coming, but yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone down as far with Airfix as I did initially. I put a lot of business their way. I only just got a credit account, which is for a pitiful amount of money. I put an order in and went over my credit limit immediately, and it wasn't a big order. So what use is it really? The point of a credit account is so that you can stock up and actually regain some of that before you have to pay the bill in 30 days. You know, it's not like it goes on forever, it's only 30 days. So yeah, I would have certainly changed that. I would have also spent a lot more time setting up the website before opening than I did. Now, I was kind of forced into the situation because of the end of my consulting contract and stuff. I wasn't intending to open full time in September. I was intending this to be part time, you know, for the first year really, and hoping by the end of that year it would at least be paying for itself, and then I could think about, you know, do I scale back my daytime job, or do I employ somebody to open longer? You know, all those kinds of things. And I was sort of shoved into a different situation, different scenario. At least I had eyes on it, you know. So again, I could open in September rather than when my contract finished in October. So yeah, the online side, because at the moment the online side is quite quiet. Now that is somewhat deliberate and somewhat forced upon me because I don't have everything that I want. Well, I don't have all the stuff that's in the shop. I'd like, ideally, everything that's in the shop to also be online, and that's not the case at the moment. It's maybe, if I'm generous, maybe 40%. So I have a lot of stuff in the shop that you can't buy online unless you actually, you know, send an inquiry. A lot of tools, a lot of scenics, a lot of fiddly stuff. The thing is, putting one product on the website takes 15 to 20 minutes. Putting it on the shelf takes 20 seconds. How, you know, put a label on it and put it on the shelf. Once a product is in the system, then it's fine. You know, I could get 10 of those tomorrow. I got a load of Tamiya paint. My replacement Tamiya paint came in this week, restocking because I'd been getting low on certain colors, black and white, obviously, but some others as well. And then you just go, you've already got your product in there, and you just got 6 more, 12 more of these, whatever, and it's instant. And then it's actually faster to do it on the website than it is to do it in reality. But I'm not at that point yet. So it still takes a lot. And of course, all of that time that I'm in front of the computer, one, is like pulling teeth. It is the dullest job in the world. If I could afford to pay for somebody to do it, I would, because good God, it's dull. And I'm also aware when I'm doing that, it's time that I am not editing podcasts, editing videos, serving customers, you know, all of these other things. So it tends to be the lowest thing on the rung, which then, of course, means that I'm not getting stuff on the website, and then those things aren't searchable on the internet, blah, 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 blah. So I tend to put new stuff, like newly tooled things, or things that's got to come up pre-order. I've just put the Very Delta, the 1/72 kit that's coming out next year. That's gone up for pre-order on the website. So I tend to put stuff like that on first, and then try and work backwards to the, like, you know, I don't want to say the less important, but like the stuff which is less return on investment, less return on immediate investment. Say, if I put something up, you know, a weathering pencil for £1, you know, I'm not making very much on that. So for your 20 minutes of investment and you sell one, great, you've made 20p, you know, of profit. Fantastic. That's not going to keep the lights on. So that side I would definitely have been more prepared for, I think is probably the way to put it. Gary, Alex, I found a kit for your Vintage Wings challenge. Where do I send the pre-unboxing pic to? Please send it to the same email address that is for the shop. Same for the channel. It is manmomo, M-O-M-O, .am@gmail.com. Okay. If you've got a Vintage Wings or an F-35 or a general inquiry or just a picture of a model you want to show me, that is the email address to use for any of it. You don't need to send a pre-unboxing pic separately to your finished one. Completely up to you how you do it. I'm happy to receive them all at once. There's no particular format for it. I won't disqualify anybody for putting it in the incorrect order or something. But yeah, the channel and the shop email address is the one to send things to. Okay, Chris Newman, totally new to modeling. I have several kits of various sizes and from different makers. I'm looking forward to giving it a go. Question, do you or others find you have a go-to or preferred kit? That's another good question. I don't think a preferred kit, but if this kind of comes to Mojo build, doesn't it? I think if I am looking to do something, if I'm kind of feeling a bit like, all my other projects are just like seeing too much work and I don't really feel like doing that, I'll do something firstly off camera because doing stuff on camera feels like work in a lot of times. I don't actually feel that too much. I know other creators sometimes do. I know Moss, for instance, feels that like, oh, doing it on camera, he's got to do all this. My setup, I've got a setup here. I've replicated that setup at the shop, so I have a similar space. I got the same layout and paper and everything, so I can get consistency. Doesn't matter where I film. And I tend to film everything I do because I think, well, I did a crappy old Airfix Sherman today. And I say crappy because it had been pre-built. Somebody had built it, broken it, shoved it in a bag. It came with a load of secondhand kits that I had. And I was just going to throw it together and use it as a paint mule. And I thought, well, if I put it together, if I video it and actually do a little video on it, showing you can actually restore like a zombie kit, that actually might be useful to somebody, And that's the kind of, I guess the way that the channel has evolved in my mind is that I'm trying to, stuff that I would take for granted, I'm trying to do videos on to make more available because people might not have thought of something or might not know that you could do that. Got to a point with a model where they break it and stuff and just think, oh, I'll just chuck it in the bin. Whereas actually, you don't need to do that. You can just take a little bit of time, go back, make sure you're like scraping off old glue and paint and things, and clamping and all that kind of stuff. So I just did that. If I was going to actually have a kind of go-to thing that I wasn't going, first of all, I wouldn't do it on camera because then it kind of feels like a holiday, weirdly. And I do something that I wouldn't feel could add value to somebody else in that way. So I did this recently. Maria went back to Barcelona to see her sister before Christmas. Unfortunately, came back with COVID. That's the other thing that's been holding me up this week is Maria has had COVID all week. She came back from Barcelona, felt bad, went back to work on Tuesday. The guy said, have you tested for COVID? She's like, well, no, it's just a cold. She tested and they said it was the fastest positive result they've ever seen. It was like within seconds, big red bar. So she's been off all week. She tested negative yesterday, thankfully. We've both been vaccinated, so it was relatively mild and short. But that obviously did bang up a bunch of stuff that was otherwise planning to do. So I've been doing more shopping and all that kind of stuff that she normally does on the way home from her work. But while she was in Barcelona, this is a very long segue to get back to the original point, but that's my style, I guess. I was a bit bored. I was a bit fed up. I didn't feel like doing anything on camera. I was at home. It was crappy weather outside. I didn't want to come in here. It was cold. So I did the Airfix Cromwell, the 1/35th scale kit, because I thought it's been done to death. You know, what am I going to say differently about the Cromwell? Um, I'm just going to put it together. And it's a really nice kit. It goes together really well. I don't give a damn that it's got the wrong number of rivets on the wheels, to be honest. But I thought if I get it to that stage, I might actually use it then to show like shading techniques. I think I'm actually going to do a video on using weathering pencils, watercolor pencils, to represent various different effects. But that doesn't require you to have seen the build, you know. So that is a really good kit. So I would go to a tank. I wouldn't go to like a Jeep or an armored car or truck or aircraft, because they all have interiors that you have to do, really. A tank, you can close everything up and it's just a box, you know. Yes, differently shaped and things, but I find tanks are my kind of go-to mojo build. And if I'm going to do something, and I think they're quite good for starters because they are forgiving in that way. There isn't a part that you have to pre-do, you know, like a cockpit in an aircraft, to then put together, and you know, you can mess various bits up. So in terms of what tank, if I were going to recommend a tank for somebody to get into modeling, it would be the Tamiya Panzer II. It's an old kit. You can get it for a tenner. So it's old, it's cheap, it's of decent size. It goes together really, really simply. Is it the best Panzer II kit? No. Is it a good Panzer kit? Yeah, it's pretty good. And you can learn a lot, you know, doing that. It'll be a fun, enjoyable build, and you can go nuts with, you know, what you do painting wise, and if you want to try out weathering and stuff. So if anybody is thinking of, you know, starting modeling and wants to get into it, an older Tamiya kit I think is always a good place to start, because they don't cost that much money. You know, the price value proposition for them is good. They go together pretty well. The older Tamiya kits, people bemoan because they might have some accuracy issues here and there, but when you're starting out, that doesn't matter. You know, just enjoy the build, just enjoy the hobby, and then you can try whatever else you like out with it. So yeah, I think a Panzer II would probably be the one that I would come down to there. Not a question, but I think it's worth bearing out. So I have to. I owe a debt of gratitude to all of these people: Moss, Matt from Model Minutes, James from LPJ Models, John Alec, Fenris Models, Hardy Scale Models, Sully Scale Models. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm sure you guys will know them. I can't remember all of them in the Discord group, but they're a fantastic group of people. Nothing to do with models. I'm not talking about models and thinking about what they produce. You know, we all have our different styles, which I think is great. It is like a model club. It's like my original model club. I said at the beginning here, and it is the same. And I think the reason why that works is the same reason why the original Top Gear worked, or the original reboot back in 2007, 8, or whatever it was, with Clarkson, May, and Hammond, because there's chemistry there, because they are genuinely friends, and that camaraderie between people who genuinely have affection for each other does come through. You know, it's not false. We all get on. We all make each other laugh with stupid stuff. We all do silly things, like occasionally dress up in jackets and shirts, talk about bananas and pajamas. You know, so and I think that for me has been the greatest personal takeaway in modeling this year, is being part of that larger group, for sure. And I agree, it is fantastic. This is an excellent question. Thank you, Dark. Can't get my teeth in. Dark Soldier. Question: ever think of maybe having classes at your shop for beginners or something? Yes, I'm actually putting a set of notices in. A lot of people in the shop have asked for particularly airbrushing classes, but also weathering and other stuff. And I've actually put together a schedule of different things, ranging from basic modeling up to kind of intermediate, what I call intermediate stage modeling, which is what I would say I am, and weathering and pre-shading, aircraft detailing, all those different things. Um, so those will be going up. I'll be running those on a Sunday because Sunday is free. I'm open every other day of the week in the shop, and evenings I think are fairly precious to most people. So Sunday afternoon, I'm hoping to maybe run 2 sessions, depending on how many people are interested. Probably a maximum of 6 people per session, but absolutely, and there's been good expression of interest. We'll see actually how it goes. Um, and having a shop gives you a few unique advantages there because I can provide a kit, for example, for people to work on, and include that as part of the cost. And I've got a premises to be able to do this. I already have a setup there to be able to work with. So absolutely, yeah, those will be going up. I will put the schedule on the website as well. And I'll probably do a few posts on Facebook and probably on community here as well. Because that is one thing. I think as a model shop, how do you distinguish? How do you survive in today's internet-heavy shopping experience? And that is by adding value. And I like to think of the shop as quite a traditional, old-fashioned kind of thing, where the value of going to a shop is not just to see stuff on the shelves and buy things. It is the interaction. I get a lot from the interaction of people coming to shop. I've had some great conversations. I had a guy come in yesterday who used to fly Vulcans. He flew Catalina. He does talks now. Elderly gentleman. But guy used to fly Vulcans. He's flown Dakota. He said, "Oh, I've probably flown about 30 odd of these aircraft in your shop." I'm like, "That's amazing." I've got some good customers who I would consider friends as well now, which I think over a short period of time is fantastic. So I think adding that value, and a number of people have come in with their children of various ages, who are excited about what's in the shop. Older children, obviously, sort of 12, 13 upwards. And I think that's to be fostered, right? It's incumbent, I think this is part of what I believe the IPMS kind of misses, is that it's kind of, or at least if it recognizes it doesn't execute it very well, is inspiring that next generation, and whether that next generation is like children or like people in their 20s or 30s or 40s, people are just coming to modeling novices, let's call them. All those who are getting back into it, an awful lot of people come into the shop getting back into it and talking about, I've never done airbrushing, what would you advise? And I say, well, in the new year I will be doing some courses, if you'd like to come on that. And I try and give that an honest appraisal. So I haven't sold stuff to people. In fact, people sometimes have come up with a kit and I'm just like, okay, and like, oh, I don't know anything about this. Would this be okay for my 12-year-old? I'm like, probably not the first choice, And it would have made me more money to sell the, £25 Tamiya kit than the £12 starter kit from Airfix. But the child will have a beneficial experience because it's a kit purpose built and they've got paints and stuff. And that's building a relationship with your customer. That's basic retail. So yeah, I think as part of that, getting into the courses, giving that, passing that experience on. I think I've done a lot of training. As part of my first role in commercial was to do a lot of product training. So I've got a lot of experience with that. So hopefully I can do it in a way that people actually will pick up on it rather than just me shouting a load of words. We'll give you a PowerPoint presentation or something. But yeah, that's something that's happening in the new year. Taggers. Now you have a second-hand kit area in the shop. Have you considered having something like I'm searching for after XYZ board, perhaps like a 5% commission, etc. Okay, so I have several. So I've changed things around a little bit in the shop. You may have seen from the last shop video I did. I now have second-hand kits in the appropriate area. So like I've got 1/72. I'm making these hand motions, you can't see anything. Imagine down one side of the shop, you've got 1/72 scale kits. At the end of that, there's kind of aircraft, mostly 144, 1/72 scale, second-hand section. Then you've got 48 scale and bigger aircraft, and then there's a shelf, a couple of shelves at the bottom, which are second-hand. Because if you're already looking for that size of aircraft, then it makes sense, rather than just having a big smorgasbord of like, here's all the old crap, you know. Now, in terms of having like, I'm searching for whatever board, I don't have the room. So the simple answer is it's a good idea, but I just don't have the room to have a board which isn't full of stuff. So I've actually been looking at, I've got one piece of wall which actually goes between, it's where the old counter went across, between the 72nd scale and the 48 scale, and there's kind of a little bit that comes out, and one face of it doesn't have anything on, and I need to put a board up there. I've got to measure it to get the piece of board so I can put on a load more hanging stuff, because the one thing I'm lacking in the shop now actually are places to put things. Now what I do is I will look for kits for people. So if people are particularly looking for something, then I will try and source that for them. And I actually had a customer who I did a commission for, Seafire, which I do have a video on coming out at some point next year. I didn't want to do anything on that until I delivered the commission, which I did yesterday. And I can't say too much about it in case he hasn't given him yet. But I will talk about that next year when the video comes out. But he is looking at making all of the kits of the vehicles that he's had in his life. And one of them was a Norton Commando 750cc motorbike, which he remembers there being an Airfix kit of. And he said, "Can you get me one of these?" And I said, "Yes, it's not actually an Airfix kit, it's actually an old Hella tooling. But yeah, I can look for one. How much are you willing to spend? Because they are on eBay for like £300 or something ridiculous. Or you can buy it from the States for like 180 plus import duty and all the rest of it. Or I can actually go and look for one. So he told me how much he was willing to spend, and I actually lucked out in finding one almost immediately, which was on sale during IPMS Scale Model World. And I think because it was on sale during that time when all the modelers were occupied elsewhere, I managed to get it at a reasonable price for it. It still wasn't cheap, but so I do that. So if people are interested in finding a particular kit, I will find it for them, for whatever price they're prepared to pay. So say, could you find me a TSR2 for £50 in 72nd scale? I'll be like, well, I can try, and I'll have a look, and if I find one, I'll let you know, and we can do the transaction. Let's see. This one. Would you be able to do some workshops doing things like airbrushing? So yes, I think I just answered that one. So apologies if you're strong. I didn't see that before, but you were 2 questions too late to get the first one in there. John Alec, this is an excellent thing. I found this out the other day when I can't remember, I was doing a review on an ICM kit, and I had to look for something and found, sorry, this is Dark Soul. I'm looking at John Alec, who had a question below. and they do these step-by-step videos. Actually, I think it was on the Mulch, the little submarine. They're really, really good. Their videos, their step-by-step instruction videos are fantastic. So ICM are really impressive. I mean, they're making really amazing kits. The Kozak 2 I'm doing at the moment is a fantastic kit, almost mini art level of detail, including seats which are made from, let's see, the front seats are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces, which is a bit ridiculous, but it is good. You know, they've got, I think, the best instruction booklets overall in the industry at the moment. They've got the best boxes, which, again, people comment on this in my videos sometimes about, you know, you're reviewing a kit and you're judging the packaging. Why? It's like the kit has to get to you in one piece, otherwise it's useless, right? Okay, quick aside, small story. Maria had a tea service, old vintage tea service that was her grandmother's, and her sister had it in Barcelona, and Maria said, could you ship it over, because we quite like to use it, and we've got the house and everything. We've only got a flat in Barcelona. And her sister packaged it up in big plastic tubs, you know, big 50-litre ones, whatever they are, with bubble wrap and everything, and sent it over. I think there were 4 or 5 of these. And 2 of them got absolutely fucked, really got smashed to pieces. I mean, like with somebody, almost like somebody put a forklift through the side of one, and you know, a lot of it was ruined. And I tried my best to repair what I could, but some of it was just, you know, literally atomized. You know, heartbreaking. You know, I just felt so bad for her. So packaging is super important. If those boxes had been metal, you know, that wouldn't have happened. If there'd been, you know, those flight pieces. I'm not criticizing her sister for, you know, sending that. The shipping company is to blame. But same applies for models, right? I picked up an Airfix Sea Fury at the shop the other day. Shit box. Sorry, Airfix, but it's really thin. Just single ply card. You know, it just like squashes. Might be fine for a 72nd kit, but not good for that. And yet you pick up, well, the Gannet, and it's a big sturdy cardboard box. ICM have these big sturdy cardboard boxes with a flip top lid, which I know Moss likes. And then on top of that, they just put a thin, glossy card cover with the box art. So best of both worlds. So I think they're leading the way in a lot of areas, and they're doing this in a war zone. I mean, staggers me, and they're really nice people as well. So yeah, ICM doing really good. So do check out their videos if you do have an ICM kit, because they are pretty impressive. Okay, John Alex Scale Modeling. What's a newer kit make that you are eager to try? Ooh, that's a very good question. You know, I don't know about a newer kit make or a kit manufacturer, but I haven't made a Dora Wings or a Meng model yet. I'm quite keen to try both of those, because is it Dora that are doing the Fairy Delta? I think it's Dora Wings that are doing that. Is it Special Hobby? I don't know. I've got it for pre-order in the shop. I should look at my own website, shouldn't I? I'd like to do that kit. I think that looks like a really nice, I mean, it is a really nice aircraft. Again, hold your hand up for the nation that has missed the most opportunities in aviation. You know, we had the opportunity to make a Mirage-like plane well in advance of others. It was the world's fastest plane for around 9 months or something. It was the first plane to fly faster than 1,000 miles an hour, or 1,000 kilometers an hour. I don't know. One of them, fast anyway. You know, and it got canned. You know, the Fairy Delta 3 never happened. So that's coming, and having seen the like photos of the screws and stuff, looks like a nice kit. Lots of options as well. I think there's like 5 options, and they're not just like a big silver dart. One of them is red, I think, and all that. But Meng, somebody bought. I got a Meng kit in because I try to get kits from as diverse a manufacturers as I can, just to show that I can. So that if somebody's like, "Oh, you do Meng, could you get whatever?" It's difficult to have a broad range of them all, but you know, if I've got a Rodin and a Meng and a special hobby and a special navy and an Edward and Das Werk and Mini Art, then you know that I can get those kits. So if you're interested in one, say, could you get this? And then I can, like, yeah, order it be about a week, you know, depending on the stockist, whatever. And a Meng model came in of the Fiat G91, the weird little pointy nose, open mouthed 1960s jet, I think it was. Looks like a saber that's nose has been pulled and stretched. And because it was Matchbox did a kit of it years and years ago, but that looked really nice, and it sold like that. I got it in. I think I sold it within 2 days of it coming in, which was like, wow, I didn't expect that. But it did look a really nice kit. So I think Meng is one that I would like to try, and yeah, Dora wings as well. Okay, just scrolling down a little bit. Taggart, you're getting a lot of questions in today. Either in a good or bad way, what has been your most surprising kit and manufacturer for even tools, paint for sales in the shop? So 2 kits that have been surprising in terms of the numbers. Okay, my 2 highest selling kits in terms of numbers, the Airfix F35B starter set and the Mary Rose. I didn't expect the Mary Rose to be a big seller. The F35 is consistently, you know, as soon as I get them in, I got in 4 this week and I've got 2 left. You know, and it's Thursday. Thursday was a pretty slow day, you know. So yeah, it's surprising in a number of ways to me, but I think it shows that Airfix have got the right idea. And I think, as I said in my F35 roundup of all the 1/72 scale kits, I mean, the Airfix kit came, I think, 4th or 5th, something like that. Now, if you actually look at the kit as just a kit, yeah, it's got some good points and some bad points, right? It has some oversimplification in some areas. You know, the nozzle is dreadful. The exhaust nozzle is garbage. You know, if you want an accurate representation, but the way that the surface is recreated is more accurate, actually, even than the Tamiya kit in terms of the ram tape and stuff. You know, Tamiya overdid the ram tape on their F35. Even though that is actually a good selling kit as well, they did overdo it. Surprising that it hasn't sold as much. I've had a couple of the Academy kits, which is by far and away the best of the F35s, and that hasn't sold. So go figure. Okay, just scrolling down through the chat. So once again, guys, if you have a question, please put question and then your question, because otherwise I may miss it just as a comment or chat with others. Question: have you approached any local tabletop gamers groups? My brother had a shop and that's how he turned a profit. Well, funny you should say that. So, I mean, the straight answer is no, I haven't. The slightly more complex answer is I have 2 rail model clubs near me. I've got a number of radio controlled clubs. I've got a number of scale model clubs, not close by, but kind of sort of in the center of like an area where it's a bit light, which is one of the reasons I wanted a model shop where it is, because it kind of pulls in from that, you know, vacuum. 0 point energy. an interesting discussion, science discussion for another time. So there are a lot of people that come into the shop asking about Warhammer. Now, I haven't looked at supplying Games Workshop stuff because of the stipulations they have. Again, I don't need another RC company to deal with, right? I've got Hornby at the moment, so I don't need to deal with Games Workshop. And I couldn't dedicate what I would need to, I think, to make it successful. And I don't want to also pave the way for them to just open another Games Workshop store after, you know, I build up a community. That being said, getting together those people, providing somewhere that they could actually meet, and providing them with stuff for their armies. So scenics, you know, basic material, tufts, you know, for the little things, better paint than Citadel. You know, all of those things are stuff that I am doing already. 3D printed bits. So that's something I'm going to be doing in the new year. I've got a new printer coming because I don't really want to have to shift all of these things. These have resin in the tanks. I don't want to, you know, have to take the resin out. Resin is nasty, messy stuff. I would rather, if I can, and I can, because I pre-ordered this printer and paid for it ages ago, before when I actually had a real job, I paid money. That's coming to the shop. So, and it's a big, basically, it is that printer there, which is the best printer I have. That is the Mini 4K from Frozen. Fantastic printer. I'd recommend it for anybody who's thinking it. There was actually the Mini Sonic Mini 8KS, I believe now, which is cheaper and just as good, if not better. It's slightly like a 1 centimeter smaller build plate in one dimension, I think, which is nothing. But it's basically that on steroids. It's like twice the better. It's huge. I have a number of Kickstarters that I backed literally years ago with commercial licenses, so I can print minis, basically D&D minis, wargaming minis. And if I print those and start to attract that community in, and also being able to print bits on the fly and things like that, I've already got 3D printed rocks and terrain stuff, which again, people have bought for that kind of thing. So I haven't approached them yet. I'm almost drawing in that community because there isn't that kind of thing there. So act as a focal hub for it. So that is something I'm going to be doing more of. I kind of want to get a bit more of the stock for that kind of area, get the 3D printer set up and some examples of that shown before I do that. Because it's not like I don't have, you know, bits to be getting on with. It's not like I'm sitting at the shop just like, what do I do today? But yeah, it's an excellent point, and one that I am currently engaged in and will do more of in 2024. David just bought Airfix PBY5A Catalina, which had been started badly. Oh dear. Windows fixed on outside. Ooh, a lot of glue spill. Question: what is the best way to take apart and clean? That's a really hard question to ask without actually seeing it, because without knowing exactly how it's been put together, it's difficult. One trick you can try is try putting it in the freezer before trying to work the joints, because sometimes if they've used super glue, it's a real good trick. It can work as well with plastic welded joints because they become more brittle because they're chemically bonded rather than thermally bonded. So it can just place the extra stress so that they crack along the lines. So unfortunately, if you can find a space which is open, a crack, if you like, it's best to start from there and then work along it and try to work along the natural seams. But there'll be a lot of cleanup. Windows are probably going to be your worst bit, because if they've got a lot of glue on them, they're generally, you can salvage them. Sometimes it depends on how deep the weld goes into it. But sometimes it's better, especially with like if it's an old Airfix kit, windows weren't great anyway. So to get some clear styrene and make replacements is probably easier. So There isn't a best way, I would say, but there are several things that you can do. Um, if they, the problem is if it's a lot of tube glue, because tube glue, it's a secret, right? Which isn't a secret. Tube glue is basically when you literally, if you boiled it down, but if you think of it like basically is normal Tamiya glue, solvent glue with styrene in it. Yeah, it's just very dilute kit. It's like super dilute sprue goo. That is all a traditional, if you like, plastic cement is. So unfortunately, it does contain essentially styrene. So that's why if you put a bit down and all the solvent evaporates, once it's dry, there's still something there because that's the styrene, right? If you look at Tamiya, standard Tamiya cement, you actually look at the ingredients on the SDS, it'll say, styrene, like 1 or 2%, I think it is. Now, because of that, if they've used a lot of it, they're adding material to it. So, it's difficult. That said, it will still be weaker than the surrounding plastic. So you could try a little bit of Tamiya extra thin, a little bit of solvent glue or whatever whatever solvent glue you have in those seams to try and soften that up, and then sharp blade in between. Just go carefully, go slowly, go carefully, because the most likely thing is, and I've done it many times myself in exactly that situation, is that you end up cutting or harming yourself in some way, and I wouldn't want that. But best of luck with it. Okay. Question. When will the next installment of the flying boat build be? I may manage to squeeze one in before the end of the year. I may do that next week. So she is sitting upstairs in, not here, obviously, in the house. Because Maria's had COVID all week, she got, apart from being chased out of the office with pitchforks, she was also given a computer. So she's been working. That's another reason that I'm here, because I thought it's warm enough. She's already got the sink set up there. I don't want to clear it all off and then get my stuff and that kind of thing. But it's in that room. It's in the office, the spare room upstairs. So it's very easy to get. Both wings are on. The fuselage is the same as it was before. One wing has I put styrene inserts in, covered with sprue goo. I think I did that on one of the episodes. I haven't done the other side. So it's coming on a little bit. I haven't done too much more than I did on the stream, but I just want to finish off a couple of bits. So yeah, probably next week. Oh, Airfix did a G91 too as well, did they? It's an interesting aircraft. It's a funny looking thing. It always reminds me of a shrew. Same with the Alpha Jet. It's because that long pointy nose, very shrew-like. The G91 just looks like a happy shrew, or maybe a hungry shrew. Yeah, I was surprised about the Mary Rose too. Bizarrely, there are quite a few people called Mary Rose around Wincanton, so I know some of them have been bought for them. Or there's just one person called Mary Rose who now has a stash of Mary Rose kits. Have you thought about offering 3D printing service in your shop? Yes. So that is one thing I've already talked about with a number of customers. Is somebody lost a kit part actually. Again, one of my good customers, and said, would there be something you could do? I said, well, actually, the easiest thing to do with a small piece like that, rather than trying to make it out of styrene or something, is 3D print it. Just design it in CAD and then print it out. Like, what, you can do that? It's like, yeah, can. Especially if it's a simple shape. I'm not going to be designing entire complex organic shapes, certainly not for free. But yeah, 3D printing services. I don't think there were a lot of print shops that started up in the early days of 3D printing and failed because it's not profitable. It's a good value add, but I don't think you can make a living off it. But I think as an additional thing in the shop, absolutely. Especially with 3D files becoming more widely available, more people getting those CAD skills and being able to do that, and not having or not wanting to invest in, one of these things, or not wanting to have to deal with all the stuff that goes along with it, because the printer itself, they're coming down in price. Still a good chunk of change, 400, 600, £1,000, depending on the size of the printer and the quality, or more. That's a start. Then you've got the resin to print it with, which isn't cheap, but it's also just nasty. It's chemically not very nice. It stinks, and you've got to clean it up. So you've got all the waste from that, and you've got to deal with solvents. Methanol, IPA. Yes, there are water washable prints, but then again, you've still got to deal with the waste. You can't. What do you do with the waste from the water washable stuff? A lot of people don't want to deal with that. They just want a mini or a piece of a tank, or some barrels and things. Bricks. Somebody was asking about bricks the other day in the shop. Easy thing to 3D print a whole bunch of, right? Can get great detail. They're not very complex, but you're not going to buy one of these things to make bricks with, right? I mean, you can make bricks in a number of ways, but if you want all the texture and unused bricks, 3D printing is a great way to do it. Okay. Do you know when Airfix are planning to reveal the new releases planned for 2024? I do. I know the exact date. I'm not sure if it's a secret or not. I don't think it is. Moss has predicted the 9th of January. That's not a bad guess. I'll leave it at that. It'll be an all-day event from Hornby. It'll be from Hornby. Airfix will be part of that presentation. You can't control how well they slice their object. No, so I think offering 3D printing, there are two ways to do it, right? You can either say, I'll accept your G-code file for an FDM printer, or your specific file for my printer type. I probably won't do that because, as you rightly said, John, if they've sliced it badly, then and it doesn't work because of that, then you're automatically in a bad situation, right? Because you have to say to the customer, right, well, I'm charging you for this because it didn't work, but you still used the time and the money because it's a service, right? But your print failed. And they can say, well, then your printer's shipped, So immediately comes into this adversarial thing. Whereas probably what I'm going to do is, like, you provide me with an STL file, I'll provide you with the object for X amount of money. And then that keeps it clean. So I can put it into my software. I can support it how I feel it should be supported, which is usually I auto-generate supports usually, and then add more, and then sometimes take some away because sometimes computers make strange decisions. Plus, you can orient it in a way where, because you want all the supports, right? Especially on a resin printer, I'm talking specifically here. You want the supports to be somewhere where they're as least visible as possible. So if it's got a base and underside, which isn't going to be seen, or say it's a like a roll, a blanket roll or something for a tank, you can support it from underneath because that's going to be glued down, and it doesn't matter so much. You don't have to do as much cleanup. If you've got, say, just trying to think. Say you've got a ball. I don't know why you'd want a 3D printed ball, right? But you've got a ball. Some part of that has to be supported, and you're going to have to carefully clean those supports in order not to see them, because anywhere you have, so here's a curved surface of ball, and you've got a little support, it actually physically joins to it, right? So you either have to snip it off and leave a little outside bit, and then do that down, or you have to snip it off flush and hope that it doesn't create a divot, which inevitably they usually do. I actually use two types of resin. So I use a standard high performance resin because these printers have a curing time a couple of seconds at a layer, right? Because they're mono screens, high energy. Old ones are like 10 or 15 seconds. They take much longer to print. So you want the quicker ones. So the resin has to be fast cure, obviously, but resin tends to be brittle, as I'm sure any of you who worked with resin know. But companies, Suraya are a really good manufacturer of resin. They produce flexible resins as well, but you don't want it too flexible. So usually then you get into the alchemy part of 3D printing of mixing different resins. So I use 1 part Suraya Tech flexible to however many parts I use, I can't remember, of standard resin. And that produces just enough flex so that if you drop a 3D part, mini, whatever, from sort of say that height, say 12 inches, if you just got standard resin, there's a good chance any small pieces there are going to break. They'll just shatter from the concussive force of being dropped. If you've got that flexible resin, it won't. So they'll be much more robust, which is great for tabletop gaming minis because you often knock them over, right? Because you're moving your armies or your D&D stuff or whatever. And it's great for smaller parts. So I printed the GPMG for the ferret, really delicate, and it's going to get knocked a lot, right? So you want it to be slightly flexible so that when you touch it, it doesn't instantly shatter into 1,000 pieces or part of it flies off, never to be seen again. So that kind of gets around that sort of more difficult part, if you like. And it makes cleanup easier as well, because then you're not, when you're cutting those pieces off, you don't get concussive forces going into the object, and then you get a great big, golf ball divot coming out of the surface. But it's a good point. I think the way to do it is, you give me your digital thing, I provide you with a physical thing, and for a fixed price. If I mess up the printing, a couple of times till I get it, that eats into my profit margin, but that's my fault, right? So question, have you been able to pre-order, been given a chance? No, I do not get, I know what day the Airfix are announcing their releases. I haven't been told what they are, and my understanding is Airfix will not do that. So the releases, and I don't know whether they're going to do that with what they call their tier 1 customers. Again, quick aside, it's a shit business practice to have that. As I say, I've been in distribution management probably the best part of a decade. It's in international distribution management. You don't treat distributors that way. If you want to reward distributors, you give them a sliding scale of discount based on volume, right? And everybody knows what that is up front. So everybody plays by the same rules. I used to do this with a company that I used to, basically I set up a European distribution network, and it was like, here's the contract. If you do this many units, you get, your 10% discount. If you do this many, it's 20%, this many, it's 40. Go and knock yourself out. We would love you to get a 40% discount. We'd love to support your business that much. You can only do that if you're selling volume, which is great, because a smaller company that can't manage that volume, it doesn't have the cash flow to do it, can still make money selling your units. And they know that if they get to certain breakpoints, they get a better discount, get better relief on it. But it's all transparent. It's all above board. There's none of this secret, like, well, some of you get a special level of appreciate. It's like that's just shit. That just makes everybody feel shit. What's been selling the most in your shop? Armor, planes, or ships? It's not ships. I do have a naval section. I've sold Well, other than Mary, actually, I've sold probably more Mary Rose kits than I have other naval kits in the shop. I've sold a submarine, a little Italieri midget sub. What else have I sold ship-wise? I honestly don't know. But yeah, other than Mary Rose, naval, yeah, it's not what I'd start with if you're thinking of opening a model shop. Don't just do ships. In terms of the other armor or planes, I think it's about 50-50. I think the difference in general, I'm making generalizations here, is armor modelers often buy more than one thing at once, is my observation. So somebody will come in and buy a couple of tanks and maybe like a Jeep, whereas most of the aircraft modelers will come in and buy a kit. I mean, they might buy accessories, brushes and whatever else as well. But the aircraft modelers seem to be much more mono kit buyers than the armor modelers. That may just be an impression, and there's certainly been people that bought multiple ones. One customer I can tell a couple of weeks ago came in and bought like a dozen. He was visiting his son. He said he will be coming again, but I thought that's really good. So it's about 50-50 on the armor and aircraft side, but ships definitely the long placed last. Which Airfix kit are you most hoping to see in 2024? Brand new and vintage. That is a really good kit. A really good kit. I'm already thinking of kits. Really good question. I hope that Airfix do a 1/48 scale Jaguar. I think that Moss and I have talked about this. I think we talked about it on Airfix and Chill as well. I think the Jaguar is a good shout for Airfix. It continues the trend of Cold War jets. It's getting a little bit more modern. I don't think it'll be a Tornado because Tornado is fairly well represented in modelling. Whether the kits are good or bad is you. The Jaguar not so much, and Airfix have done a 48 scale Jaguar in the past, so it is due to be revisited. And I think I quite like to see an Airfix 1/48 scale Jaguar. It also fits a lot of other criteria, right? It's got various different iterations it could be released in. It served for quite a long time. It went all the way through. You've even got like desertized versions, to the really late days of it. So, yeah, I think a Jaguar would be the one I'd like to see as a new kit. In terms of old releases, there are a couple which, and again, Moss and I were talking about this, that fall into what they call the grey area of Airfix. Those are kits released sort of between the 90s and early 2000, and well, sort of late 2000s, early 2010 kind of thing. Kits like TSR2 in both 72nd and 48th. What am I trying to think of? The Lightning in 48 scale. I think they should re-release them. I don't know whether they would be vintage classics, because I don't think they're old enough to be a vintage classic. Because a vintage classic to me is something that's like in the 60s and 70s, the golden years of what made Airfix. But I don't know whether they. Well, I know that Dale doesn't think they're quite up to, let's say, what they call the red box treatment. Now, whether they could fix that by a bit of reworking of the tooling, I don't know whether they would do that, or whether they would just go, no, we're going to retool this, because I don't know. I don't think that would work for TSR2, because there's only one version you can do, right? If you're not going to go into what if, there is basically the overall anti-nuclear flash white, and that's it. So there's only one scheme. So it doesn't go to that multiple releases thing. but it's well overdue. You know, the prices on eBay for stuff are high. I sold it one actually in the shop recently, and yeah, I think it's due for that. How they do it, and the reason I don't think it will happen is because of that. In terms of other vintage kits I'd like to see, and the Bloodhound was one that I was looking forward to, so I've already covered that. It's not quite here yet. It'll be an early 2024 release, I think. So I don't think it counts for your question. Do you know, I would love to see them, as they teased on the social media side of things. I'd love to see them do the old dinosaurs, however inaccurate they are. I think they represent a certain time, which is sort of my very early childhood of going to the Natural History Museum with a day outing with church. We did that, and it was just that kind of was one of the things that set my wonder at science going. So, and dinosaurs, of course, were a big part of that, as they are, an awful lot of children's imaginations. I would love to see them do the old wildlife series. I think that the bullfinch and kingfisher and stuff. I think those would be great vintage classics because there's something different. You don't get kits of those. I mean, I know they made kits of pretty much everything back in the day, but I think they're quirky and interesting, and I think they would sell. Because they're appealing to a slightly different set. I think you might actually get miniature painters kind of buying that kind of kit. That sort of crossover, or maybe. A lot more women are involved in miniature painting than they are in scale modeling. And I think that kind of was almost in the bridge part of that. I think that could entice some of those miniature painters more into more traditional plastic modeling, should we say. So I would love to see them. I don't think they're going to do that, but I'd love it if they did. I would certainly, if they did that, I can guarantee I will feature them on the channel because I think it'd be fantastic. The other one, the Angel's Interceptor, I don't think they'll do that because I don't think they have the license for Captain Scarlet. I don't think they'll try and get around it by just calling it a sci-fi interceptor or something. But I've fond memories of doing that as a child as well. What else? I think those are the ones that I would pick if I could pick any. Okay. That's a good question. Is Airfix the market leader in the UK, or do we not know? We don't know. So Humbrol published their figures. They're publicly traded, obviously, because they're an investment company who own them, and they post their profits and everything. They're about £12 million turnover company. We don't know what proportion of that is Airfix. The model industry is quite opaque with regards to who's biggest, who's doing most of what markets and stuff. I think that's just a general not savviness but cautiousness in business overall, in terms of not giving stuff away for competitors as a company rather than anything else than it probably was back in the day. So are they number one? It would surprise me if they aren't up there. If they're not number one, they're definitely going to be like 2 or 3. They're definitely in the top 3, I would say, for sure. I mean, competing with them, I would say you have Tamiya and Revell. Now, Revell, regardless of what you think of Revell and their reputation of reboxing old stuff, they do still do a lot of stuff, and they're ubiquitous, and they're also quite savvy about getting good deals with branding. So they do, like, for instance, World of Tanks, Farming Simulator, the Mandalorian stuff with Star Wars, general Star Wars stuff, Star Trek. They also do. They do James Bond. Airfix don't do any of that. So Revell are also easy to do business with a company. I wish, and I said this on the podcast yesterday, spoilers for it, I wish Airfix could have Ravel's business sort of part transplanted into it, and vice versa, and then you'd have one really good company, a company that produces really good tools, is really, is model minded, let's call it. They have our interests and thoughts at hand when they're going into design and all that kind of stuff. But they've also got the business nous to get all of these, deals, and they're ubiquitous, right? Revel are everywhere, and they're easy to do business with. They've got a web portal. They've, all this stuff. I wish Airfix had all of that, and I think they would be number one for sure. And then you'd have one other company which would be shit. But yeah, I think Airfix's problems are that it is, and I do have a video coming out on this. I'll probably do that for early 2024 about what are the 10 things Airfix needs to do in 2024 to get better, to improve, to become number one. And it's mostly business related. Some of that has legacy effects, like the Airfix Club. It's garbage. I'm sorry if I upset people with that, but it is. It's super, and this comes through in a lot of the stuff, a lot of the points I make, super UK centric, which is great if you're living in the UK. The UK is a small market. It's the smallest market in the world outside of Australasia, and that's just a fact. So they're always going to limit themselves with that. If they carry on with that thinking, rather than becoming broader European and North American minded. So are they the market leader? They're getting there. They're definitely getting there. Having tiers is pants, to be honest. It used to get discounts on stock items, equipment from our supplier, depending on how much of it was to get buying. I disagree entirely. It's just business. That's just how it works, right? It's not a trick to buy more. It is cheaper and you can make more of a margin. As a manufacturer, if you're producing more stuff and people are buying more stuff, it's cheaper to make it. It's just economics. I'm sorry, but that's just how it works. And having tiers and making those clear and transparent is the way to do business. Clarity and transparency is always the best way to do business. So I 100% disagree with you. I'm sorry. I respect your opinion, but I don't believe that's correct. Yeah, this just goes to the other bit. Yeah. So I think Dale has taken the company or the brand in a really good direction in a lot of ways. I do disagree with him on several points, and I think I've got a Nimrod sitting there. It does not have wobbly wings, despite not having a wing spar. So yeah, too old for Redbox, not enough for VC. So they need to fix. Well, they need to do something with those kits, right? Because otherwise they're cutting out a piece of the market for themselves. So, what do? Wait until somebody else does a better Nimrod? Trumpeter, Hobby Boss, the Zhongchang Yatai company, are not waiting in the wings for other manufacturers. They are kicking on with stuff. And whatever you say about, individual kits and, pieces where they get wrong and stuff, everybody gets stuff wrong. Sometimes they get more wrong than others, but not always. So they bring out a Nimrod and then Airfix have been killed for that one. You snooze, you lose a little bit. So I hope they sort that issue out about what they're going to do with those sort of grey area kits, because I think they are missing a trick. This is a good question. Do you carry Hella in your shop? Now, the true answer to that, the straight answer is yes. The slightly more disingenuous answer is I have one new Hella kit in my shop, and that is their Sherman, because it's a very accurate Sherman. I also have a lot of other kits, and they're all second hand. I don't have any I don't carry Hella generally, because they still suffer from the same issue that Revell do, in that. Okay, so I'll take one step back. How many new tools did Hella do last year? Any 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 respondents to that? If your answer is, hold that thought in your head. If your answer is more than 0, you're wrong. So Hella need to up their game, basically, because they're still selling old stuff. And some of those old kits aren't bad, but they're old kits, I did in fact, I think it's up there somewhere. They're HE112, not a bad kit. It's an old kit, raised panel lines and stuff, no cockpit detail. But it's a decent, goes together well. It's a decent little kit of an aircraft that not very many people do models of. And they're affordable. But I don't have anything in my shop that I would. Okay, my principle is I would hate for somebody to come into the shop and buy a kit without asking for advice or anything. Just go up, buy it, go home, and have a terrible experience, right? Which is possible if you're going to stock a Hella kit, thinking, because they might come in thinking they're buying a new kit. So everything in the shop is stuff that I would consider building myself, or it's secondhand, or it's very clear that it's a vintage classic, like the Airfix stuff. And I will advise people against buying a kit, for a child that is 60 years old. Again, I think that's part of my responsibility as a model shop rather than just an internet outlet. So I don't think Hella are anywhere really. I think they're trading on the unique bits that they did, and I would love to see them get better, and I haven't seen that yet. So Hella for me is still in that limbo kind of zone at the moment. Dinosaur kits and wildlife kits would be great for the FX Classics releases. Well, thank you for agreeing. We might not agree on business, but we do agree on that. The Austin Maxi kit. Yeah, not sure. Not sure on that one. Question: what's your all-time favorite aircraft? Ooh, that's a difficult one. That's a really difficult one. Because I'm a bit of a hooer in that I like a lot of different stuff, and for a lot of different reasons, right? I don't even really have particularly favorite aircraft for a period. What's my favorite World War II German aircraft? That's as hard a question for me. I mean, for that, if you have to boil it down, it's probably the ME-262, the German aircraft of that period. For British aircraft of World War II, one of my favorites is the Whirlwind. I think that's a massively underappreciated aircraft before its time, for cannon armament. If it had been fitted with decent engines, for those early rebar raids, I think it could have been fantastic. Modern stuff like Russian, well, no, I shouldn't say Russian, Soviet stuff. The Foxbat was, made such an impression on me as a teenager. With it, because it was so mysterious, and then it defected, and it was just this big stainless steel monstrosity with engines that lasted a couple of flights, and it was all paper tiger. Funny that with Russia. And then the Su-27 and the MiG-29 came out, and they were just like, wow, these are like, the Soviets aren't fucking about with this stuff. So those have that kind of edge for me. Not in Russian liveries now that they've made themselves global pariahs. And then again, I like unusual, weird stuff. like the Blom+Voss BV-141, you know, the asymmetric reconnaissance design, the what ifs. It's a really hard one. I also like super modern stuff, right? Like the Raptor, the YF-23, the Black Widow. I wish that had won the ATF, because what an aircraft that was. You know, stealthier than the F-22. You know, better in a lot of respects, except maneuverability. And you know, they probably were correct in choosing the F-22, because stealth. We're getting to that stage now where stealth is negating the advantages of AESA radars and missile technology, and we're almost getting down like an Su-27 versus, sorry, an Su-57 versus an F-22 is probably going to get to the merge, you know, which is back to World War II. You know, the Mark 1 eyeball is as an effective way of detecting these things now as radar. So technology has advanced to the point where it's negating itself, and you're going back to these basics. So yeah, I find it really, really hard to answer that all-time favorite aircraft thing. Yeah, wouldn't even know where to start, to be fair. So I'm going to duck that question. Okay. Martin, you are here. That counts for a lot. Thank you. I think, however, we've been going for almost 2 hours. Well, that's a good question. Is Techman good? I watch a couple of DCS channels. So DCS is Digital Combat Simulator. It is the most accurate military flight simulator you can get outside of the military. Right? It's free. It's by a company called Eagle Dynamics. You do need a fair PC setup to be able to run it, especially to run it in the kind of configurations you need to get a good experience. You do need a proper joystick and a hot ass setup, basically, because you have to do things like, if you're starting from the ground, you have to switch your aircraft on, you have to switch the electronics on, you have to spool up the engines properly. You know, it's like flying an aircraft. And flying an aircraft ain't easy. I think the manuals for some of the modules, like for an F-15, is like 600 pages. You know, so it's. I've played DCS. I have a video on my channel on DCS, which is me playing the Flaming Cliffs 3 expansion, which is, they're the simple flight models, right? Those are the easier ones to fly. Flight models are quite forgiving of stuff. I fly an F-15. Trying to do the basic introductory mission, it doesn't go well for me. I managed to complete that mission once, and not on that video. So I think the video is called something like "Watch Me Die," because that's what you do. So I watch quite a few channels. There's one called the Grim Reapers, which is a UK guy. It's an international group. So a couple of guys from the US, some of who actually work on aircraft as ground crew, fitters and stuff. There's an ex-RAF pilot, used to pilot Jaggers again. Really fun group of guys, and they're doing silly things. They can do combat simulations and stuff. There's also one called Growling Sidewinder. He's an American guy. He's got a really relaxed kind of way of approaching. Very John Alec. And one called Longshot, who is his friend. They do a series called Two Morons, which is hilarious if you watch their stuff, messing about in DCS. But the point I'm getting to after all this long waffle introduction is there's a lot of DCS using the F-22, using the F-35, using the Su-27, the J-20, which aren't as stealthy as the J-20 is arguably getting towards that. The Su-57 is kind of semi-stealth. Even the Eurofighter has certain stealth characteristics, right? They're low observability rather than stealth, which the Su-57 kind of is, and they've put recent stuff onto it to make it more stealth. J-20 is designed as a stealth aircraft in terms of everything. And they have a lot of them. You know, there's like 157 or something in service, whereas there are, I think, well, who can tell with Russia because they lie about everything, right? But I think there were 6 in service at the start of the Ukraine war. I mean, who knows? Have they made more? Have they lost any? We won't know for. Well, I expect if we ever know, it won't be till considerably after the Ukraine conflict. But there's a lot of DCS modeling of these on publicly available data. On a lot of groups do stealth modeling of aircraft and things, so you can get, rather than just published data, you can get a more accurate kind of look at how things are going to be. And all that goes into DCS, into the flight control modules and stuff. And people do these flights. And inevitably, when you put stealth aircraft against stealth aircraft, they negate each other and you end up getting to a merge. Because even if you can detect them, so you can detect a stealth aircraft with an AESA radar, that's an active electronically scanned array radar, at between 10 and 20 miles, depending on how good the stealth is, how good your radar is, aspect, all that kind of stuff. So say it's 20 miles. 20 miles is Fox 3, that is active radar guided homing missile range. You fire, you can detect them. That doesn't necessarily mean you can lock them. So you have to be able to radar lock a target to be able to fire a missile at it. So you radar lock it, fire a missile. A stealth aircraft can go into a notch. So there's a couple of ways to defeat a radar guided missile. You can go into a notch because they use basically a Doppler radar. If you go into a notch perpendicular to the missile, it can't determine whether you're going away from it or not, so it can lose track. You also dive, you can drag it into thicker air, more friction. It has to pull lead on you to be, because they don't try and hit you, they try and predict where you're going to go and hit that. Right? Pull it into thicker air, slow it down, you turn, make it turn, because it has to pull lead again, so it has to do a wider turn, bleed its energy, right? It's all modern aerial combat, or even old aerial combat, is all about energy management. And because they're stealth, of course, it has a harder time because the seekers on these things have smaller radars, so they're not as good as the one in the aircraft. So as soon as you like hand off the missile to itself, it has a harder time. So it's easier for chaff to defeat and stuff. So you probably defeat the first missile. Then you've got to reacquire your target, lock and fire another one. Chances are they probably also fired at you, so you're probably also defensive. You maybe get another radar missile off at each other, probably defeat those as well. And then you're in the merge. And the merge is when you're literally, you pass each other and get into a dogfight where you're looking at high off-bore sight infrared guided missiles and cannon. So yeah, you're back to World War II. You're tracking with Mark 1 eyeball. It's often easier to physically spot the aircraft against the sky than it is to rely on your warning radar and things. So it's always the way with technology, right? And why wars always accelerate technology, because you're always trying to get that little advantage. Look at the Focke-Wulf 190 in World War II. It was running rings, literally rolling around the Spitfire Mark V at the time, until one pilot very kindly landed one at a British airbase by accident. So our plan to capture one kind of went out the window, so it was delivered to us, and we could examine it and look, and we had the interim Mark 9, one of the most produced variants of the Spitfire, where we just put a bigger engine in a slightly longer Spitfire and got it up there, and that had the power then to compete with the 190 and slightly take the edge. So, and then what did they do? They went back, look at the 109, you get to the F, you get to the G. So there's always this sequential piece coming along. A very, very long and meandering explanation there to say about, we'll probably get dogfights there. Which is, again, going back to the F-22, why the F-22 was probably the best choice, because why F-23 better for that long range? So better against fourth gen. Fourth gen, you can detect a fourth gen like a standard, like a flanker, from an AESA radar in an F-22 or something from 60 miles plus. So if you've got a long range like an AMRAAM D, 120D, or the upcoming A260, which has that kind of range, or a Meteor, you can kill the other aircraft 40 miles before he ever even sees you, before he knows you're in the air. So from that point of view, yeah, great. But if you're going against another stealth, when you're both going to see each other at 20 miles, it's a different ballgame. So yeah, if you're going to want to look at that, look at Growling Sidewinder, look at Grim Reapers. Grim Reapers do some great reenactments. So they do, for instance, could a single US destroyer, modern destroyer, have prevented the attack on Pearl Harbor? So really daft stuff like that, which of course you can model in DCS. But they do some really interesting things. Interestingly, they predicted, they said, could Ukrainian MiG-29s armed with AGM-84 HARMs successfully conduct anti-air suppression in Ukraine? And they did that literally, I think, a week or 2 weeks before there was a picture of a MiG-29 carrying American-supplied HARMs actually in combat. And they were just like, and that was when it was secret, right? They were just doing it on speculation. It's like, yep, no, they could, just like they predicted. Okay, so, yep, we've got dogfights. And that brings us to the present. So we are coming up to 2 hours. I thought I'd probably be on for maybe 30 minutes or, at a push 60, and it's almost 2. So I can only attribute that to I have waffled on for far too long. But I appreciate that all of you have come to ask questions. Let me just quickly check, because I just don't want to miss any that were on. Okay, there were 2 that I haven't addressed. One, are you able to ship to the US from the shop? I am. Please contact me if you're interested. I will tell you, shipping rates are very high. I will try to get you the best deal on what you buy. I did ship some to John Alec. It was a horrific shipping cost. It did arrive, fortunately, in a couple of days. So it was fast, if nothing else. So at least you do get something for your money. And I did try to, sweeten the deal with a couple of extra bits. So I don't have it as a standard because I don't want to feel people like, I'm trying to rip them off with shipping, which I really am not. And the other question, which is an interesting one from Dark Soldier, any tips when masking clear parts? Patience. So if you've got the money, buy a masking set, and that makes it easy. I use a masking set on a 48 scale Blenheim. When my father died, he had a few kits that he had bought that he hadn't managed to do. The Blenheim was the first one that I'd kind of got to. That it took about, I would say, 18 months or so before I could kind of look at them, because they still had that raw association. And I thought it's pointless them just sitting there, the best way to honour it is to do them. So I did the 48 scale Blenheim, which is actually sitting up there, and used a masking set for those, and it's just so much easier. If you're going to do it yourself, if you've got an ICM kit, they supply templates, so that makes it easy because you can just put the template on the masking tape and just cut it out, and you're done. You have your masking set. The way I typically do it on, say, a large, I did the Seafire that I did as a commission. Large bubble canopy, it's very easy to mask. I cut thin strips of masking tape, or buy thin masking tape. I sell, I think, down to 0.5 millimeter. It's usually not the need to go that. 1 millimeter usually is enough. And I mask the edge. So I'll cut it into small pieces because usually there's a curve on these things. So I'll go, and I typically use normal tape rather than those for curves. That's just habit, I guess. Don't quite trust the curve stuff or myself with the curve stuff enough yet. Maybe that'll change. But just mask along and then fill in the rest with normal, Tamiya tape or, this kind of washi tape or whatever. And then importantly, I will go over the whole thing, not right to the edges, so over the overlapping stuff, I'll go over with masking fluid, artist masking fluid. And the reason I do that is just in case I've got an angle which lifts up an edge of something, or, you know, there's a bit I haven't quite covered. And because sometimes you get, like if you're using some lacquer paints, for instance, they can react with the latex. It doesn't matter if you've got tape underneath it, right? So it can react a little bit on top. It doesn't affect the canopy. But the worst thing is to, you know, unmask your canopy and then discover there's a little line of like hard paint with mist behind it, and it's just like, oh, now I've got to deal with that. So that's what I always do. I mask with tape in small sections, fill in with larger sections, and then go over with artist masking fluid, which creates a nice solid barrier. You can guarantee you've got no problems with, you know, not masking that little bit or just lifting a piece up. And then I'll spray it. And you just need patience because it takes 10, 20 times as long to mask it as it does to spray it, especially if you're using outlaw paints. Use outlaw paints with that sea fire, and it's like I masked it all up and I sprayed it, and I'm just like, that took me 3.5 seconds to spray. I spent, you know, 15 minutes masking it, 3.5 seconds spraying it, and you just feel like I need to spray it again. You don't need to, because you know, outlaw paint's really pigment dense, but it's like, was that it? But yeah, that would be my advice. Oh, last question. I do use the Royal Mail, and the reason I do is I've had really bad experiences with, for instance, Every and Hermes. Now, Royal Mail has as well, you know, its foibles, but I always use track services. So I either use 24 or 48 hour. So if you paid for shipping, you get 24-hour tracked Royal Mail, because with enough cover to cover the price of the kits if they do go astray. So I want to make sure that it's covered, you know, so that if you paid for a £50 kit and get free shipping, it usually goes second class. Second class is 48-hour tracked, and I think they're insured for like £150. So if it you know, if it gets dropped off a bridge or something, you get your money back. You know, so it's important to me that either you get your kit, and I haven't had a kit go missing yet, fingers crossed, since sending them from the shop. But I do use Royal Mail just because of that, you know. Wouldn't necessarily say reliability, but it does cost a bit more. But it's the assurance that you're either that you don't waste your money, yeah, and end up in a protracted battle with a delivery company. To the US, it depends. UPS seems to be one of the best ones. Okie dokie. Right, well, we're coming up to exactly 2 hours, so I can only say thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for putting me on 1.5 million views. I couldn't believe that when I saw that come up on the little TubeBuddy thing. Over 16,000 subs. I didn't expect that. I'm going to aim for the end of 2024 to get 30,000. That's going to be an acceleration because it's been 16,000 over about 18 months. So see if I can do 15. That will be doubling my current rate. 500 subs a month. So I'd like to. I'm going to be making a few changes behind the scenes to do more of this stuff and get more videos out and more what I would call not necessarily interesting, but more useful content as well. But yeah, just thank you for the support. It's been, as I say, very humbling. I didn't start off. I don't create videos to farm for views. You know, I hope I earn your views. I earn the subscriptions that I have. I want to do stuff like this more to be able to, you know, give that more interaction. I think a two-way kind of thing is much better. I will try and cram in a couple more live streams before the end of the year, the short skipper being one of them. But other than that, thanks again for joining. I wish you all a very happy holiday period, whether you are Christian or Muslim or atheist or agnostic or whatever, your creed, color, race, religion, whatever. Stay safe. Have a fantastic break. Take care of those you love around you. I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.